much different. It had the ground of the Scrap Brain Zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu, the dark and reddish cloud-covered sky. But it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Geiger's theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. As I noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did. Though not as much. More rather, he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked as if he wasn't sure about going on. I made a move anyway. He ran down the straight pathway in this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple times, and that maddening laugh came again. Then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic floor. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible was going to happen to Knuckles as well. He looked nauseated walking down the bloodstained road, but I still kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him. Those black and red eyes. The red static appeared again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but black screen with text saying, "Found you!" I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What the hell is going on here? Anyways, red static came again, and then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. At this time, a high-pitched squealing from Silent Hill's first final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn, then punch Sonic. But Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke before I could even land a punch on him. That terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and I made him punch him again. Sonic vanished again with the laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more, and I felt like I was going to go crazy. Sonic was practically toying with us. He was playing a sick little twisted mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched his head, sobbing. I felt the poor thing's agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles and the screen went black with another distorted screeching noise that lasted for at least 3 seconds. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with. So little time. Wouldn't you agree, Tom? What the hell? Just what the fuck is going on here? I started to think Sonic was trying to talk to me through the game. But I was far too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second box had Knuckles in it. And in the TV screen, his red fur darkened to a reddish gray, and his dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. And he had a look of pure sadness on his face. I began to think that those are the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the same files. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap. God, I wish I hadn't. 'Cause then I began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us! Why did you give us to him?" And, "Run away before he gets you too." The cries died out as I then heard Sonic laugh, his awful, demented laugh. It sounded a lot like the distorted Kefka laugh. You're an awful lot of fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle, though he didn't last very long. I was scared and looking for the source of the voice. Won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends. I saw him walking toward me, flickering in and out in several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now, just like the others. When he grabbed me, I saw his bleeding, black, red-eyed, grinning face. I immediately shot up with a fright. After a couple hours, I continued to play the game. I don't know why, but I had to. I just had to know. I had to figure out why all this was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky, playing as Robotnik. But anyway, the title level appeared again, and this time it said ... which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it had the pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered, and the walls were a dark grayish purple with animated candlelights and a few dark bloodstains here and there. And there was a dark red curtain hanging above the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, that red curtain sways by very, very slowly. But whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant. A piano playing a sad yet peaceful song. But I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails or Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turns his head to the left, then to the right at least twice, and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation. You know, when you've beaten him at the end of the classic Sonic game and you chase him. As we continued going through the hallway. Then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downward, and now I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, so I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed the walls have gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches are now an eerie blue. Then we landed onto another hallway. This one was longer than the last one. At least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs. This one was much longer. It took me at least a whole full minute to get down. And then I heard that absolutely horrid Kefka laugh, and the music slowly faded until it was quiet. And as it did, the walls turned more dark and red, and the torches were a low black flame now. When Robotnik finally landed onto the third hallway, I noticed how he looked really creeped out, though he tried to hide it. I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, Sonic popped up right in front of Robotnik in the same way he did to Knuckles, and then there was red static. The static lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it showed me a most unpleasant image. The image showed a hyper-realistic of Sonic standing in the darkness where you can only see his face while his head and torso faded into black. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean he looked so real you could actually see the lines in his sickly pale blue fur. As if you could actually be able to feel it if you touched the screen. His face. My God. He had the most demented and horrifying smile on his face. God. That's saying something considering to the image I saw at the start of the game. His eyes were wide and black and once again crying blood. I tell you, I thought that blood would come on my finger when I rubbed the screen. There were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind and my very soul. His grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs. Much like the werehog's teeth, except much more vicious and malicious looking. Somewhat yellowish, and from the looks of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs, as if he'd just finished eating some poor animal. I stared at that gruesome image for 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. It took just 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. The screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard the Kefka laugh. Except this time it sounded distorted, low-toned, and demonic even. Went back to the image again, except this time there was the text again, though it was messed up. It was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I'd looked at since I had this game. I am God! It was when I read that message while looking at Sonic when it hit me. I realized it right then and there. This Sonic was a monster, a pure, evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And all of his victims, Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, most likely Kyle, are just little toys. And the game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world, and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with its mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but literally a spiraling abyss of pure darkness before the red static came again. This time much louder and much more distorted. So loud it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. Then it stopped and showed nothing but a black screen. As I sat there, staring at it, one last text came up. Are you ready for round 2, Tom? The Kefka laugh, now sounding more clear, as if Sonic was right behind me, played 3 times as I looked at that text in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time, the 3rd save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Knuckles. His skin turned a dull gray, his mustache drooped and had blackened, his glasses broke and blood is coming from them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they were going through. They were forever trapped within this game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog. They always will be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one, and then when he gets bored, he drags you into the game, literally drags you down to hell, where he can always play with you as his toy. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there. At least the computer's turning back on there. After I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. I turned around to see where the voice came from. What I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring directly at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling, with bloodstains under its eyes.